So I'm very pleased to bring forward our luncheon speakers. We've talked a lot this morning about ABLE accounts, ABLE programs, really a transformative change to our tax laws at a federal level, which has brought changes in tax laws in over 40 states. For your information now, there are the first 20,000 ABLE accounts open across the country, and over $75 million have been contributed to ABLE accounts. Now, that's just the beginning, because our own research team has identified there are potentially over 8 million eligible individuals and families in the country. So we're at the very beginning of this, but it's a great start. And to tell you a little bit more about ABLE in Georgia, I am delighted to introduce our State Treasurer, Steve McCoy. I can't read my own handwriting. That's a serious challenge for me. Eye doctor appointment next week. Steve McCoy. Let's have a round of applause for State Treasurer Steve McCoy.
Thank you. And it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be involved in administering the ABLE program in Georgia. It's just background that this is a unique pleasure for me, because most of my job is managing investments for the state and the banking relations for the state. But I do get to administer the college savings program, and so that's how I got involved also with the ABLE program when the legislation was introduced. It was House Bill 768, and it was approved and passed by the legislature in 2016. And it created, in Georgia, what we did is we created the Georgia ABLE Program Corporation. And I'm a board member and also the administrator of that. It's got 9 state officials and 3 private individuals on the board. The individuals are appointed by the governor. But we also, in addition, we've got several state agencies that are supportive, and in particular, the Department of Community Health. Commissioner Frank Berry is the chairman of our corporation. He's also commissioner of the Department of Community Health. He could not make it today, but he's a chairman of the board, very active. We also have Department of Behavioral Health and Development Disabilities involved, supporting the program, Department of Human Services, and the Georgia Vocational Rehab Agency, and Department of Education. So several agencies work together in concert to help promote and support the program. That, as you've heard today, the ABLE is tax exempt or deductible under the earnings are deductible under federal tax law, exempt under state. That when the legislature passed the bill, there were several options that we considered, and and one was just creating our own standalone program. Also, we considered in the legislation authorizes that. The legislation also authorizes participating in a consortium of other states, which is one consortium that was just beginning back in 2016. We could also just link and provide information for individuals to see what other programs are offered, or we could partner with other states. And in doing our due diligence in 2016, we came to the conclusion that partnering with other states would be the most efficient and effective, and both from a time standpoint and having a broad range of attractively priced investment options, it would be very efficient. So we chose to partner with Ohio, they were one of the first states to actually establish an ABLE program. They have very good infrastructure they had built out and very good staff that they had hired. And so I'm here. It's a pleasure to introduce Doug Jackson, who is the deputy director of the Stable program. And what Stable is now, it is a program that was created by Ohio. It's managed by Ohio. They white label it essentially for other states, and there are 12 other states now that have teamed up with them. And the more volume that is created, the lower the pricing is for all of us. And so it includes Ohio and Georgia, and now New Hampshire, Vermont, Kentucky, West Virginia, Missouri, South Carolina, Wyoming, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Arizona. And it's together that represents about a third of all the able accounts and assets, and by far are the largest of all the programs, much larger than even the consortium of 13 states that had already been created. So we are very pleased to be part of the Stable program and to be partnering with 12 other states, but with the lead state being Ohio. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Doug. Let me just tell you a little about Doug. Ohio did a very good job when they built their staff for it's run by the Ohio State Treasurer's Office, Treasurer Josh Mandel. But instead of just hiring just investment professionals, he hired Doug, and Doug's been in the field of developmental disabilities for over 20 years, and he's very passionate about this. Although he has a business degree, his passion is really working with people and families with disabilities. He prior to this engagement for him now, his experience was including managing the services of a direct support agency. He was an executive administration of the Ohio County Board of Developmental Disabilities. He taught human services classes at Wright State University, and he has just a wealth of knowledge and experience in working with people with disabilities, and he's the perfect fit for this. So he joined the Office of the State Treasurer to help administer these accounts, not just for Ohio, but for all the states that partner with them. So it's a pleasure to introduce Doug Jackson.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you. All right, hello, everybody. I love doing what I get to do, so thanks for being with me today. As the Treasurer said, I have a background working with people with disabilities, and sometimes I'm introduced as working with the Treasurer's office, and they're like, why in the heck are you here? But my career actually starts at working directly in the homes, doing residential services for people with disabilities. So right out of college, this was not my plan. I kind of happened into this job. God just opened up a door, and I walked in for a little while to see what this was about, and 20 years later, here I stand with you. But part of my job was actually to take people out into the community and to spend their money and buy great things that they didn't need so that they could keep their resource limit down. So we were buying things like big screen televisions that were, back 20 years ago, really big televisions with big screens, right? Like it took a team of people to carry it into the house. But we were buying those things in recliner chairs and bedroom suits and all kinds of things that people didn't need just to keep resources down. So it just didn't make sense. That was 20 years ago. Fast forward to today, now ABLE accounts exist. Now you're going to hear me say ABLE, you're going to hear me say stable, and I'll tell you why you're going to hear both things. So I'm here today with Georgia's stable plan, because Georgia, as the Treasurer mentioned, is directly tied to a group of states working together. Together with the Ohio plan, we represent about a third of all ABLE accounts in the country and over a third of assets under management. So assets under management are what people have deposited into their ABLE accounts and said, we're going to park it there to protect it for now. We have about $30 million of assets under management. To me, what that means, so to a banker, that might mean one thing. To me, that means $30 million that were not wasted, that people with disabilities got to keep in their own name by protecting it in an ABLE account. That's awesome. When that number goes up, I just keep getting happier because I know more people are able to save. So what is ABLE? I know most of you probably know this, but I'm going to start at the beginning. And if you don't know the full story, you're going to walk away from today going, I am now an ambassador. I can tell people about it. I'm knowledgeable. That's what I want from you today. Because when you leave here, I want you to tell all the people that you know, whether they're professionals in the financial world, whether they're people with disabilities, I have a saying I love: everybody knows somebody with a disability. So whether it's you or somebody you know, you could leave here today and benefit somebody's life with the knowledge that you're gaining. So an ABLE account means that you can put money into an account. Federal legislation allows this, and it lets people save without affecting their benefits, their means-tested benefits. So two programs that most people look at would be SSI and Medicaid. There are other programs also, but these are the two that most people say, I cannot lose these and still maintain my life. So they're very important to protect. We describe the ABLE plan as a hybrid of different existing accounts, kind of like a 529 college savings account, because you can put money in, you can save it for the future, you can invest it. It's a great tool for that. But it's also like a checking account, because you can start taking money out immediately. It's transactional. You can spend it on what you need to spend it on. And it's like a special needs trust because it's a protected resource. So if you're familiar with special needs trust, they exist, they've been around for a while to protect funds. It's not counted either. I'm going to talk about the differences and similarities throughout the presentation. So Georgia Stable is the partnership ABLE plan that Georgia has, partnered with the Ohio Treasurer's Office. Georgia Stable launched June 14th, 2017. Ohio launched June 1st, 2016. We were the first in the nation to launch an ABLE plan. The benefits of this: before, people could not save more than $2,000. I'm guessing that most people without disabilities, I know there's poverty, but most people without disabilities probably have $2,000 or more. If they do not have a disability, they have an account or multiple accounts that accumulate and they have wealth that's greater than $2,000. But our system was designed to keep people impoverished because $2,000 does not allow you financial independence. It just doesn't. Now you can save more than $2,000 and keep your benefits. And the account is owned by the person with a disability. So that's different than a special needs trust, because it's in the person's name, it's their money. Now we're going to talk about who else could manage the account for the person with a disability, but the funds truly are in the name of the person with a disability. It allows investment opportunities. So through my 20 years, part of my job was as a service coordinator, case manager, whatever you want to call it. So we'd have team meetings, all these professionals that sat around and talked about the life of the person that we served, and we talked about everything, right? We talked about, where are you going to work? Where do you go to have fun? Where do you live at? I never once asked the question, how are your investments doing? Because if you don't have more than $2,000, you don't invest. Wouldn't it be cool to sit around a team meeting and that be one of the questions? How are your investments doing? That's an awesome question to ask. So there's financial independence that's possible, and there's tax benefits, and there's multiple tax benefits. So it can benefit anybody who's contributing into it by possibly with state legislation, depending on what state you live in, contribution tax deductions, the tax credit, the saver's tax credit is there for the person with a disability. So there's multiple tax benefits to it. Eligibility, very important that we know who can use this. Because actually, I'd like to have one, but I have a good problem of not qualifying. But many people do qualify. So I want you to just erase from your mind what you think of as disability. Broaden it, because this is a very broad definition of disability. It's not just what most people say is DD or developmental disabilities. This can also include things like mental health, addictions. It can include medical conditions. But here are the criteria: that the disability occurred prior to the age of 26. It doesn't mean that it was diagnosed necessarily prior to the age of 26. I just had somebody with autism come to me and said, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 30 with autism. I said, well, you didn't hit your head and get autism, did you? I mean, it was a part of that person's life. He just didn't get a clinical diagnosis of that until later on. He is eligible. Now, the other criteria that have to exist is that any one of these, it's not all three, but the person, if they're eligible to receive SSI or SSDI, eligible, it doesn't mean they have to be receiving it, just that they would be eligible to receive it. They would qualify. So 26 and SSI or SSDI, good to go. Or 26 and the condition that they have is listed on Social Security Administration's list of compassionate allowances conditions. Very broad list of disabilities. So I'm not going to try to rattle them off to you. I would just say go look at it, because there's many conditions listed there. or self-certification, which again takes the definition and broadens it again. Because a self-certification is a medical professional that says that you have a marked and severe functional limitation. Now that definition is the same definition used by Social Security. But we say you don't have to be receiving SSI, SSDI, you just have to have a medical professional that says that you have a marked and severe functional limitation. If you have that, and the condition is expected to last at least a year, you do not need to send in that documentation to us, you just need to have it on file. When Ohio was developing its plan, and what Georgia got as a partner is a simple plan for people to use. One of the benefits that makes Ohio's plan well used across the nation is that it's easy to use by people with disabilities. We eliminated as many barriers as possible. If you have to mail in documentation, that's a barrier. You do a test to it, and it says, under perjury of law, that the information you're putting in, that you are attesting, yes, I have this disability. But we're going to take your word for it because it's your account. And if you're lying and you don't have a disability and you're using this, that will be found out at some point, and you'll be the one that pays the penalty, not us. So it is upon you to really have that diagnosis. But enrollment is free and it's done online. Why online? Because we wanted you to be able to do it in your pajamas at 10 o'clock at night. So you can do it anywhere you're at. Smartphone, we have mobile-friendly website to do it on. We do not have an app. You don't need it, a mobile-friendly website. You can enroll right there. It's quick, it's easy, it takes about 20 minutes. Now, do I sound like a salesperson yet? You too can have a Georgia Stable account in about 20 minutes. It is truly about 20 minutes. We actually have an individual, I love this. I did not ask her to do this, she did this independently. An individual in California with CP, her name is Darcy. Darcy types with one finger on each hand. She set up a video recorder, enrolled herself in a Stable account, posted that video to YouTube. It took Darcy 10 minutes and 18 seconds. She types with one finger on each hand. I type with all 10 fingers. Darcy beat me. So she is just that good at using the computer, but she enrolled herself into her own plan. So it is an easy process. It can also be done by a parent, a guardian, or a power of attorney. Very important to understand that because it's not just limited to the person with a disability managing their own account. If they need assistance, the assistance could be provided by a parent, a guardian, or a power of attorney. Power of attorney form is available on the website, so you don't have to go out and seek a lawyer to find this or create it yourself. You can just print it off, very simple form to print off. Power of attorney has to be notarized, but it's kept on file. Again, you don't have to file that in the courts, you don't have to send it in. A very easy process if you're giving the authority to somebody. It's also limited to just the Stable account. So it's not giving this broad financial power. It's saying, I just need help with this account. And we like that because we only want to give people authority over our lives in areas where we need some assistance. We don't want to give away, everything when we don't need help on everything else. So how do you get funds into the account? Let me talk about some of the limits that are there for the account. And I kind of laugh when I say the word limit because the first number you see is $462,000. It's hard to use the word limit on that number, right? That is a lifetime balance limit. So that means that over a lifetime, it has to remain under $462,000. Once it hits there, you can't put any more contributions in. Now, interest could make it go higher. That's okay. But you're capped at putting any more contributions in. You could spend it down and put more contributions in. But that lifetime balance is going to take a long time to even get there. We aren't going to get there for a while. Actually, I hope to be retired before anybody hits that limit. But that is a very high limit. On an annual basis, $15,000 a year. Now that's different than a trust. A trust can take a large amount of money in a lump sum. And a Stable account can only take $15,000 at a time. That's a combined contribution. So anybody who's contributing, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, your friends, whoever's putting money into it, it's limited to $15,000 as a combined contribution. If the person is employed, they can have more funds go into it because of the Tax Reform Act that just went into effect January 1st. So this was an improvement to the bill. This improvement allows people that are employed to put in an additional amount equal to the federal poverty amount. which is currently $12,060. So it gets a little bit confusing there, I know, but there's two thresholds there on an annual basis. If you're employed, you can go up to $27,060 being put in, but $12,060 of that is limited to just wages, just earned income. The other $15,000 can come from any place. So we went from only being able to have $2,000 ever to being able to have $27,060 saved year after year. That's pretty empowering. This is a game changer. When I talk with people, one of the most common questions I get is, what's the catch? You always told me I couldn't save. You're telling me I can now? And I love to just smile and say, yep, you can. You can finally save. How does the funds get into the account? Two different ways that are possible. One is just like online banking, electronic funds transfer. So if you have an existing bank account, you can just make a transfer from that account. You can link multiple accounts. So if mom and dad have a bank account and the child with a disability has a bank account, you can list multiple accounts, have them just transfer funds right into the stable account. Very easy, very modern way of doing it. Or you can mail a check in. A lot of special needs trusts still write checks out of the trust. That's fine. Other people still using checks. That's great. It's mailed to a P.O. box, and it gets put into that person's stable account. E-gifting is another powerful feature. Has anybody ever heard of GoFundMe? A social media way? Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about the power of e-gifting in somebody's life. So Michael is an individual with CP. His mom was his primary caregiver. She was paid by Medicaid. So in Ohio, we have something called shared living. She was a shared living provider. She provided his services and got paid for it. Michael's mother passed away. You can imagine the trauma that caused in Michael's life. It was unexpected death of his caregiver, his mother. So the friends and family that he had said, Michael, we want to make sure that you can start your life living independently, that you've got the money that you need. And so they opened up a bank account and started putting money in, donating this money to Michael's life to create independence. Does anybody see the problem with that? A bank account is a countable resource. So it was going to kick Michael out of the Medicaid services that he needed to get out of bed in the morning. Now, Michael works for the city he lives in. He's a city employee, a public employee, very productive member of our community, sits on the school board, very involved. He can't get out of bed in the morning without a Medicaid provider coming in to help him out of bed. Once he's out and he's on public transportation, good to go. He can't live without that service. So by having a bank account that was going to disqualify him for Medicaid was a big problem. Now, I'm a friend of Michael, and I'm in that circle of friends who was, contributing money, and they came to me and they said, Doug, do you want to put money into Michael's account? And I said, no. They said, we thought you were his friend. I said, I am. That's why I'm not putting money in his account. I said, but I've got a better idea. How about we put it, because I knew, because Michael and I had talked about this, only weeks before his mom passed away, he opened up a stable account. So we transferred the money out of that bank account, closed that bank account, put it in a stable account, and then send out an e-gift email from his stable account to all the family and friends and said, if you want to make a contribution, contribute directly into my stable account, and it's protected. I can keep my benefits. His stable account grew quickly. It was awesome because the donations, the gifts that were given to him were protected from the start. So this is a good way for people to take advantage of normal things that happen in people's lives without disabilities, like high school graduation. What's the number one gift in high school graduation? Money. But for a family with a child with a disability, well, I said, no, don't give money. We'll have to spend it right away or hide it. I work for the treasurer's office. I know you were hiding money. You don't have to do that anymore. You put out an email, they click on the link, and they fund the stable account. And that's just modern way of doing things. That's not weird. That's not weird to having a disability or having a stable account. GoFundMe exists. This is GoFundMe built into the stable account. Investment options. So I talked earlier about how cool it would be to have this conversation. There are options available to people, everything from really not investing at all the way to investing in a growth mutual fund, and everything in between. So you have very aggressive level of investing to very conservative levels of investing to no investing. So up on the screen, there's just a couple of examples of what people could do. The examples are endless, but there's 4 Vanguard mutual funds that are investment funds. So they range from that conservative to aggressive. You could choose any one of those. You could choose all of those. There's also what we call the bank safe option, which is just like a savings account. It's going to earn interest, about 4 pennies every 10 years. So it's not really an interest-bearing account in the way of growing it, but it's like a savings account is. So some people, about 50% of the people that we currently serve, have their money in the bank safe option because they said, we just want to plop it someplace and save it and keep our benefits. That's fine because they don't feel comfortable with investments. You know what our next biggest option is? The biggest option there is, the most aggressive option is the growth option, which is the highest risk option. And that made me very nervous. So I started asking families using it. I said, why are you using that? Is it go big or go home? Because I was nervous. Are they going to, the stock markets go up and down, and they were going up in 2017. I mean, it was great. People were seeing returns and loving it. But 2018, we had a correction. And I was worried that what would that correction do? And they said, we're not worried. We aren't going to touch this money for 10, 20, 30 years down the road. We're saving for a house for our child with a disability. So we're just going to leave it in there for 20 years. They knew what they were doing. They saw their time horizon. They chose the investment option that was best for them. It worked. So you have the full range of options. You can change it twice a year. But investments are now a possibility built right into the stable account. So what can you spend your funds on? Because that's another area people say, what's the catch? Now you got my funds. Now I can't spend them on anything, right? Because it's a narrow definition. No, it's a very broad definition. Qualified disability expense is anything that relates to the disability, so that's the person with a disability. You can't give it away. It's not meant for other people's use. It's to be used by the person with a disability. And anything that helps to maintain or improve health, independence, or quality of life. Now, I had a father ask me after a presentation, he said, can I buy music CDs for my son? Being the good public employee that I am, I didn't answer yes or no. I said, justify it for me. He said, my son has autism and the provider takes him into the community to buy his music. He talks about his music with all his family and friends, and his music calms him. Do you see how he justified it? If you're a professional in the field, if you're a person with a disability who's lived with it and played this game, you understand that there are buzzwords, right? You don't say because he rocks out to his music. You say because all those 3 things that make it specific to him, specific to his disability, it qualifies. I have people say, what about vacation? Again, I say, justify it, because it very well may be a qualified disability expense. We oftentimes say that it is after we hear how people justify it. They say because the planning part is an involved part of the person with the disability. They look forward to it. It's a social engagement for them that they wouldn't otherwise have. The therapy that they get as they are mobile, that they get out because they don't usually get out. I mean, use the terms that make sense. Don't just say because vacation's fun, right? I mean, there's specific ways that people benefit from that. And so we've seen all types of justifications, and it's unique to the person with the disability. The examples that are given, though, I want to review over these. Housing and rent. Special needs trust, if they pay housing and rent out of the trust, you have reduced SSI because in-kind support and maintenance. If you pay for rent out of a stable account, you do not have reduced in-kind support and maintenance. Do you see how you can take money from a trust, put it into a stable account, spend it out of the stable account, and maintain your full SSI benefits? Some people call that money laundering. I work for the treasurer's office, so I'm not going to call it that. It is a great way to use 2 tools, both with their own rules, both with their own benefits, to be of value to the person with a disability. But now you can use money that's in a trust for housing and rent without affecting your SSI if you're using it with a stable account. Perfect use of 2 tools together. Basic living expenses includes food within that, so you can buy food with this. Transportation, education, assistive technology, financial and medical bills, legal fees. Let's say you want a special needs trust. You can actually set it up and pay for the fees out of your stable account. Another win-win. They work together. They complement each other. So spending from the account is very easy to do. First is checking and savings. You can transfer it back to an existing checking or savings account. So you could use an existing account the same way you're using it now and just fund it through your stable account. I'll be honest, I don't like that one for one reason. The transaction from the stable account shows a transaction to your checking or savings account, but it doesn't show what it was spent on from there. So there would be additional record keeping necessary. After being a provider and being responsible for record keeping, I want to make my life simple. So I know that the next two ways are more simple for record keeping. The second one, third-party checks. It's like online bill paying. You log into your stable account, you tell us who to pay, and we mail the check to them. Or we pay them online if that's available as well. So it's like online banking. Then the payment is recorded in your stable account. So there's always going to be a transaction record, and it's made right away. You don't have to wait for it to happen. It happens immediately. Then we also have the stable card. Because we worked with families with disabilities, we got from them what they wanted out of this account, and they wanted some protection from the balance in the account. So the stable card is actually a loadable debit card, which means when the debit card comes to you, it's worth nothing. You have to log into your stable account, transfer money onto the debit card, and then it's worth the amount that you transferred. So think about all the reasons why this makes sense. Protects from vulnerability because the card is only worth that amount. So it doesn't give you direct access to the full balance of the account. Think about teaching money management skills to a child or an adult with disabilities. As you're teaching that skill, they have a card with only that amount on it. They can't overdraw it. It's only worth that amount. The card also tracks all of the records. So if it's being spent by the card, every financial transaction is recorded there. Also allows you to put notes into that. So if you choose to go in and add additional notes as to why you made that purchase, those notes would be saved forever. You can then just print off a report for whatever date range that you need right from your stable account. So again, all the benefits that are there, including text alerts. So the text alerts are good both for low balances as well as, so again, picture this, hypothetical situation, you're a parent, you've got a child with a disability. You want to empower them, you give them a card that has some money on it. They go and spend, they come home, and you already know what they spent it on because you got a text message when they used it. Isn't that a great parent tool? Now, that's an option that's there. You don't have to use that option, but some people really like that option. We'll talk about a few other limitations. Again, I use the word limitation cautiously because you can have up to $100,000 in your account, still maintain your Medicaid and your SSI. Now, SSI is intended for food and housing. Supplemental security income, the public benefit that's there is to make sure that people have food and housing. Social Security said at $100,000 that you have sitting in an account, we think you have enough for food and housing. So they suspend SSI payments if your balance reaches $100,000. At that point, $100,000, everything over it counts as a resource. So if you get technical, you can actually have $102,000 because $2,000 is that threshold, but that would mean that you have no other resources anyplace else. But if you wanted to play the technical game, you could have $102,000. SSI suspends at that point. If you spin back down below $100,000, you still qualify for SSI and you could start receiving your payments back again. You don't have to reapply and go through the eligibility process again. You just get back into the system. But a person's own wages, and I heard this talked about earlier, and I agree with it. Wages still count as wages, and that's part of the problem in the system. Because earned income is still earned income. This does not protect earned income. This protects resources or assets. I will say to the myth of if I work, then I lose out. For every dollar that you earn, yes, your unearned benefits go down, but you want to do the benefits calculations on how much that is because you probably are still going to come home with more money. But again, each individual circumstance is unique to the person, and there are challenges based on income. This is a resource protection. If the account holder passes away, Medicaid recovery has always existed outside of stable accounts. So Medicaid clawback, callback, recovery, whatever you want to call it, Medicaid says, hey, we've paid for a lot of services while you're alive. We want to look to see if your estate has any value in it to recoup some of the money that we spent. If you meet the criteria for Medicaid recovery, that's a big if, because first you have to meet the criteria for Medicaid recovery. They could look to this account to recover funds out of it, but they can only look from the date the account was open forward for the amount of Medicaid services provided during that date range. So let's say that you've received Medicaid services for the last 20 years. You open your account today. You pass away 10 years from now. They aren't looking at 30 years. They're looking at the 10 years from today to the day you pass away, the value of Medicaid services during that 10 years. So this is a better protection in that sense, as well as you can pay for any qualified disability expenses before they can recover. So any outstanding medical bills or legal bills that you have, even includes burial and funeral, can be paid before Medicaid recovery. Okay, so this is a quality of life tool. This is not a legacy tool, as I call it, or a pass on my wealth to the next generation tool. This is about making the person with a disability have a quality of life while they're alive. So here, this is what I was just talking about on the Medicaid, what it can still pay for. If you were paying Medicaid premiums, you had a deductible, that can be subtracted as well before Medicaid recovery. So what does it cost to actually have that? For a Georgia resident to have this plan, it's $3.50 a month. Yes, there is a cost to it. That actually started out at $5 a month, but because we have more people participating, we're able to lower the fees. We hope to continue to lower those fees. We may be able to reduce it more yet this year. If we hit our benchmarks and we continue to grow as projected, that could come down again. I work for the State Treasurer's Office. We are not a for-profit bank. We're not a for-profit institution. This is just to sustain the program and the cost of the program. So at some point, that could actually go down to $0. And then just the investment fees would cover everything else. The investment fees, let's look at those. 0.19 to 0.33%. If anybody knows investments in here, and I'm guessing we do, I see heads going up and down, they're going, that's a good rate. You don't beat that rate. For what you're getting on the Vanguard mutual funds, that's a very good rate for investing. Stable account and special needs trusts, again, just the comparison of the two. These tools complement each other. When Able Account was first being discussed at the federal level, the legislation, people in the special needs trust world said, oh no, this is going to put me out of business. Now people in the special needs trust world say, oh yes, let's work together, because there's benefits of the two working together. I already talked about how you could use a stable account as a spending vehicle for housing, for rent. You can use it as a spending vehicle with the stable card. Because for a trust to use it, you always have to go to the trustee and ask for the money, right? For every expense that you want to make. Well, if the trustee sets up the stable account and then gives access to the stable card, the person could buy what they need using the stable card and not have to knock on the trustee's door every time they want to spend the money. You think the trustee likes that? Yeah. They like that because they're giving access. It's controlled, but it's access to the funds that the person can have. So it's a win-win. There's many benefits that are unique to the stable card, including the tax benefits that are there, the interest-free growth that's in there as well. So federal and state tax on the interest is not due. And we are here to help. So I can say this because I don't work for Medicaid or Social Security, but I'm guessing if I asked you the question, have you ever called a Medicaid office or a Social Security office, and did you get a live person answer the phone on the first ring? Would you say yes or no? No, it does. First week. We pride ourselves on this. This is why I'm here today, because our customer service staff answer the phone. They actually pick up and say, hello, stable accounts. And I know that because I call them on a regular basis. They are trained staff that have all worked with people with disabilities. That's one of the requirements to be a customer service staff, because some of the conversations are long, some are challenging, some have communication barriers. They're okay with that. We answer over 1,000 calls a month. If anybody in here has called the customer service number, I'll ask you publicly right now, how was your experience? Because I guarantee the response would be good. That's how confident I am in it. We're there to assist the people that we're serving. Currently open 9 to 6. We're expanding those hours because some of our partner states out west. So in the near future, that's going to go 9 to 8. We also have email that's answered next business day. So if you can't get us, if you are truly doing it in your pajamas at 10 o'clock at night and we don't answer the phone, you can still email us and we'll email back the next day. But we're very proud of what we do for customer service. Then Georgia Stable also has a website. So you can go right to the website. You can view lots of information, frequently asked questions, PowerPoint slides, many things are there. But we only make this happen because there is a grassroots effort from here in Georgia. So grassroots meaning two things. One is the state treasurer's office, as well as the Department of Community Health. So Brandy, do you mind waving your hand? Brandy is here today with me. They're on the ground here locally. They have limited resources, but they also have the website and champions. So that's the second thing I want to talk about are champions, advocates, ambassadors. You now know about this. You can be a champion that says, I'm going to go back and tell my organization about this. I want to make sure other people know about it. And if you contact Brandy, Brandy will say the best way that we can accommodate that, whether that's literature that's sent out, whether it's a webinar that we can do for you. There might be an opportunity to do something in person if it all works out. Whatever we can do to help, Ohio works with Georgia. Ohio is here to back them up as well with help. That's why I'm here today, because it is a true partnership, and that's how we grow across the nation to help people with disabilities. So that is what I want to tell you about Georgia Stable. Now, before I take questions, I'm going to turn it over so that we can really hear about the value of it for the people that it serves. So Tina, you want to jump up here?
My name is Tina Blakey. I work for a provider of services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we provide residential and day services throughout the state of Georgia. I'm a social worker, I'm an advocate, I'm a mom, I'm a mother, but most importantly, well, not most importantly, as importantly, I am a sister to Nick. Nick is my brother who lives with autism. Nick is a high school graduate and is enrolled in seminary classes where he goes and he learns about the parables of the Bible to teach others. Nick would not possibly be able to live on his own independently without supports. Mainly that support is financial support. Through Georgia Stable, my parents and my family are able to contribute to his Georgia Stable account so that we can ensure his financial independence as much as possible throughout his life when the time comes when my parents pass away and my family and I assume the care of my brother. Many families are plagued by the dilemma of how to assist their loved ones in achieving full independence in spite of realistic financial demands. Without equal opportunities, individuals with disabilities will not shed this label and achieve true independence. Financial support can mitigate their limits and increase their abilities. Why prohibit a person from having employment opportunities, community supports, housing, transportation, and assistive technology that enable them to live a more productive, active life? We cannot continue the dichotomy of demeaning labels such as burdensome while deterring someone from contributing to their own welfare. Everyone should have the right to plan and save for their future needs. Thanks to Achieving a Better Life Act, ABLE, and Georgia Stable, we can achieve this. Before Georgia Stable was passed, families spent time trying to spend down individuals' accounts so that they wouldn't go over their $2,000 limit and lose their financial benefits as well as their health insurance, just like Doug was telling us about. This prevented them from securing independent lives and perpetuated their dependence on government assistance. Not being allowed to save for the future and their expenses kept individuals at risk for maintaining that independence. If someone cannot save for the hot water heater or refrigerator going out, they are at risk. Now we can focus on saving for the hopes, the dreams, and the necessities because of Georgia Stable. Having a Georgia Stable account means individuals are maintaining independence or for some, finally being able to gain that independence. Witnessing how these accounts impact individual lives and families is the most exciting part of Georgia Stable. These accounts are the beginning of a path to independence for many Georgians as well as many others across the United States. individuals will have the ability to save money to pay for their home modifications, vehicle adaptations, therapies, medical supplies, and educational opportunities. Georgia Stable equates to opportunities that were previously out of the realm of possibility for many people. As Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can live it. Thanks to Able and Georgia Stable, individuals with disabilities are able to open accounts, save for their futures, and live their dreams of independence. Thank you.
I want to touch on two more things real quick, and then I'll take any questions that are there. One of the things is 529 rollover. I didn't mention that during the slides. 529 rollover, college savings account rollover. People with disabilities oftentimes go to college. I don't want to ever assume that a person with a disability is not going to go to college. But we've had some families say, I started a college savings account when my child was born. It doesn't look like they're going to go. But they don't want to be penalized for using the college savings account on things that are not qualified expenses for college savings. They can now roll it over to a stable account and spend it from the stable account on everything that the stable account allows, which includes education. So that also was made possible through the Tax Reform Act. So it became possible January 1st. And we just did our first account rollover. So we're ready for that. Anybody in Georgia who wants to do that, we're ready to support that decision. The second thing is another, what I call an equalizing opportunity. So people with disabilities, if they are working in a place that has a long-term savings plan, like a 401k, a retirement plan, they've often said, that's going to put me in jeopardy long-term, because as that grows, at some point that's going to be considered a resource. So many times they either opt out or they're not even given the opportunity to participate in it. We had our first employer launch January 1st, making contributions into a stable account at the same rate they were making contributions into a 401k for employees without disabilities. 4% into a person's account as an added incentive to that person with a disability being an equal employee in that company. Now we have, thank you, it was awesome. Now we have other employers lining up to do the same thing because they believe that there's a value of hiring people with disabilities and want to maintain equal opportunity in doing so. So we are launching that. Ohio's plan with Georgia as a partner is the only ABLE plan doing that, but we think it's the right thing to do, and we're excited as we talk to big and small employers where they go, you're right, that is the right thing to do, let's do it. And so another way that we can work together to make that possible here in Georgia too. So with that being said, a couple of the other updates there on the end, let me ask you, what do you think? What are your questions? Okay.
One of my son's on Social Security, the other one isn't, but I'm sure I could get a letter from a doctor. Do I submit that online?
No, you're just attesting when you do the enrollment process that you have that documentation. So no, you do not have to submit that. Again, one of the barriers that we removed. Other ABLE plans do require that to be submitted, but not the Georgia plan. Nope. There's one back there.
So I represent a community bank headquartered here in Georgia. What opportunities might exist with your office in terms of partnership for community banks to participate, or is our only option to try to compete with you, which obviously with the resources you have with these other states seems to be a daunting task? Are there opportunities where we can partner with you to help provide this need for the community with our financial expertise?
Mm-hmm. So there are ways that people are using banks. So in working together with banks, what some banks are doing is setting up alerts that when a person's account is getting near that $2,000, an alert goes out so that the account can be managed, and then they use the stable account to help manage the extra resources that would otherwise put them over in that account. The other piece that I would mention is that whether it's an investment broker or financial advisor, if you are helping a family with a disability by offering knowledge about this account, now it's currently not a broker sold model, so you're not going to gain off of telling somebody about it directly. But if you're helping to solve a problem that they've had over a lifetime, their loyalty to you for helping to solve that problem is tremendous because you're a valuable partner in their lives. As far as offering a product, directly, this is a federally legislative plan. There's not really a product to offer from the bank perspective currently, but we can work together so that you have information in your banks, so that your bankers understand that this is there so that they can help people that they serve. Question?
This goes back to education. And in the past several years or so, several universities have developed a program for individuals with disabilities who might not be able to work to get a college degree, but might be able to attend some classes for college. There's a special program for them. And it greatly enhances resumes and job applications. But this wasn't an option about 20 years ago when the kids were born. So maybe a 529 plan wasn't started for them. Could they use funds from a stable account to go towards that?
Absolutely. So the question is, could they use funds from the stable account to go towards higher education in this case? It can go towards any education. It's not just limited to higher education. So when you think about some of the changes that are happening in the 529 world, what they call the K-12 changes, where you can spend it for pre-college classes too. This could be spent for any education, whether it's tutoring or an institution that you're paying directly for educational costs. You can use it for that, yes. Absolutely, it's great expense. Back here.
So from the SSI, the money that is earned from the SSI, can that be transferred to the stable account?
So the question is, can the money from SSI be transferred to? And the answer is yes, and here's how. So currently, SSI cannot directly deposit into an ABLE account. The mechanism isn't there to link those two organizations to work financially. But here's an easy workaround with Georgia Stable. Georgia Stable recurring contributions can be set up. So let's say your SSI payment goes into your checking account, but you know that every month you have excess. You don't spend as much as you're receiving from SSI. So you want to put, we'll say $200 a month into your stable account. You could set up a recurring contribution from that checking account to go into the stable account, and it would happen automatically. Or you could manually do it at whatever amount you choose on a monthly basis after the payment.
I need you to pull out your crystal ball. I know there's a 1.0 version of ABLE, and I know you're implementing the 2.0 version. So look in your crystal ball and tell me what the 3.0 version is going to be.
And
Well,
Doug, let me just say, Mark's question will be the last one. Doug, go ahead, and then
Yeah.
I'll tell you what the crystal ball will be.
Yeah, I was actually going to defer to Michael because we work on a national level with NDI, as well as other ABLE programs to make sure that our efforts are united in that. So Michael, through part of the NDI, the ABLE National Resource Center, can probably answer that question the best. Do you want to take that?
No one has a crystal ball like who was going to be elected president 2 years ago. Much of the crystal balls were wrong. Here's the three amendments that two are already in development. The third one I'm trying to get into that package of amendments. One is the original version of the ABLE bill, which took 8 years to pass Congress, did not have an age limit of age of onset of disability of age 26 or younger. In fact, it had no age limit. So there is a bill that gets reintroduced every year now since 2014 when the law was signed, and that is to take it from 26 to 46. And that will eventually pass Congress. The second is to also increase the amount of contributions annually. And right now, we were able to make a little bit of ground with that with the amendment last year, as Doug shared, in terms of individuals with disabilities earning income can go above the $15,000 contribution limit. But as with 529s, there are no annual limits. And so I think we have to continue to push that up, through amendments to the law. But there's no reason to limit it at 15,000. It's really an opportunity for individuals, families, employers, and others, as Doug shared, to be able to contribute into an account. So I see that as a second way. The third way, and really Ohio deserves the credit, as it was the first state to open ABLE accounts in the country, is to provide further change to the tax law so that employers have a tax incentive to match contributions of employees or family members who are contributing to ABLE accounts. That just gets that extra push and motivation for particularly large employers, the Microsofts, financial institutions that employ tens of thousands of people, big retail companies like a Walmart, Target, supermarket chains, Amazon, you name it, anyone, is to be able to just have that extra push in the same way they get write-offs for healthcare plan coverage, they get write-offs for other things, get a write-off that I'm going to match my employee who's contributing to their own son or daughter or someone else's ABLE account that's at least a direct family, would be probably what would be reasonable because that tax break's going to be large. But again, it makes sense in terms of where people are. Those to me are all feasible. And then the last piece, much more challenging, is that right now, as Doug has shared, is we get past the $2,000 asset limit or resource limit for means-tested federal benefits. But why can't we get past the earnings limitations that also impact people's coverage under health care, Medicaid, under other means-tested programs that have not just asset limits, but also have income limits. All of these would be positive in terms of changing mindsets and changing expectations, not just for the individual with disability, but for everyone who in some way interacts with that person. I think all those changes will come in time. Right now, though, we've got to push up from 20,000 to 50,000 to 100,000 accounts to get the first million accounts. When you have 1 million accounts, people take notice because 1 million accounts is going to be over $300 billion in either investment or more conservative savings. And that becomes really an opportunity to impact the economy and impact specific facets of the economy in terms of types of providers, particularly in technology, transportation, even healthcare, that will make a difference. So that's some of what the future might look like. Okay, let's have a hand for Doug and Tina. Thank you so much.